The media plays a pivotal role in our political process. Just like political parties and interest groups, the media serves as a linkage institution in the policy-making system. Print media in America dates back to 1783, when the first American daily newspaper was printed in Philadelphia. The local daily newspaper has been consolidated into chains. Chains are groups of newspapers published by a media conglomerate. Media conglomerates today control 78% of daily newspaper circulations. These conglomerates not only control print media, but also television and radio stations. For example, Rupert Murdoch's conglomerate controls both Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Since the proliferation of the Internet as a source of news, newspapers and magazines are decreasing in circulation. Serious magazines that cover political news and opinions are primarily read by educated elite. Radio was invented in 1903, and the first television station appeared in 1931. Since then, broadcast media has displaced print media as America's principal source of news and information. Not only has broadcast media replaced newspapers as a main source of information for many Americans, it has also had an impact on politics and policymaking. Starting with Kennedy-Nixon debate in 1960, presidential candidates have become more media conscious, and campaigns are becoming more candidate-centered and not necessarily issue-focused. Both politics and war have been covered in detail by the media. During the Vietnam War, the media coverage was unprecedented. Today, that same coverage is commonplace. The media is protected by the First Amendment, freedom of speech. As a result, American journalists can criticize the government leaders and policies. So in theory, media in America is independent from the government, but does that mean the media is completely independent? Although American media is independent and privately owned, when it comes to journalistic content, they are totally dependent on advertising revenue. If you were the owner of a media outlet, your central objective would be to get the biggest possible audience. If you can prove your ratings to potential advertisers, you can charge money to air their commercial. The higher rated the show, the more a media outlet can charge. For example, the cost of a 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl can cost more than $5 million. So yes, they are independent, but what media outlets show is directly related to revenue. So we will discuss this further in class. What about media chains? Do you think they impact news content? Yes, they do. We will also discuss this in class. Imagine, I have to advance it, sorry. That's better. Imagine only having 3 television stations, and between 5 and 6 p.m. would be the only time you could see local and national news. Hard to imagine. Well, that time did exist before the introduction of CNN in 1980. Cable news has changed the media landscape. Cable news now brings the news to people as it happens. However, this coverage doesn't guarantee that news events are covered in depth. Now that there are a variety of cable news stations, many of the programs on these stations are able to focus on one topic and aim for a particular audience. For example, if you are a liberal, you might only watch MSNBC, and if you are a conservative, you might only watch Fox News. Why is that? Well, people tend to consume media sources that reinforce their existing values. Not only do people consume cable news according to their existing ideologies, but they also choose internet sources that do the same. As a result of these changes in viewership, narrowcasting has replaced broadcasting, meaning that stations target particularly narrow audiences. The most recent medium to enter the news world is the Internet. What has been the impact of the Internet on media politics? Although the Internet has increased access to limitless information, it has also contributed to narrowcasting. People are able to research the things that they are interested in and ignore everything else. Narrowcasting is not the only change happening in media politics in the reporting of the news. News coverage of events is no longer in depth. Once the news has been found, it has to be compressed into a 30-second news segment or fit in among the advertisements in a newspaper. TV news is little more than a headline service, with exceptions like the News Hour, which is on PBS, and Nightline, which is on ABC, but comes on late at night. Analysis of news events rarely lasts more than a minute, except on the News Hour and Nightline. Ironically, as people have greater access to information, news coverage is less complete. Americans have grown accustomed to hearing their news in sound bites, which are typically 10 seconds or less. Despite the fact that the First Amendment freedom of press provision does protect the media from government intervention, there are some legal actions and government regulations that can be applied to the media. Can a newspaper be sued? The answer is yes, but only after publication of the information. Legal action can be taken for libel, obscenity, and inciting an illegal act. There is such a thing as prior restraint that protects the media from government intervention. The court case Neer v. Minnesota established the principle of prior restraint. According to prior restraint, the government can't stop something from being published before a newspaper chooses to publish it. If the government wants to take action against a news organization before something is printed, that is unconstitutional. Action can only be taken after publication. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, regulates media in many ways. First, the FCC helps monopolies from controlling broadcast markets. They have rules that limit the number of stations owned or controlled by one company. Second, the FCC oversees the licensing of broadcast stations. The FCC verifies that the station is serving a public interest. Third, the FCC issues fair treatment rules concerning the use of airways for political candidates. It enforces the equal time rule, which requires a station selling advertising time to one candidate. They must also sell time to the opposition running for the same office. In addition, the FCC enforces the right of reply rule, which states that if a person is attacked on a broadcast other than the news, then the person has the right to reply via the same station. Gatekeeper, scorekeeper, and watchdogs are roles of the media. Be sure to know these terms because we will discuss them next class. See you soon.